In an earlier PD module, we discussed 6 accelerated learning techniques, and the first of those focused on creating a sense of urgency. Teachers fully engage all students and believe every second of class time is precious and urgent. We will dig deeper into this accelerated learning technique in this PD module, based entirely on the research and proven practices of Doug Lemov. By the end of this PD module, you will have been provided one specific teacher move with one corresponding Teach Like a Champion technique that enhances educational urgency and entirely embraces the role pacing plays in fully engaging all students in the classroom. The focus teacher move in this PD is monitoring and adjusting lesson pacing, and the corresponding technique is called Change the Pace. This strategic teacher move aims to create a sense of instructional importance for students by moving smoothly among 5 typical activities. We will go over the 5 major types of activities, what Lemov calls the muscle groups, and how to shift among them to create good pacing. In this video, we'll discuss some ways of switching activities to create mileposts and give students a sense of newness. Because we sometimes need to stick with an activity for a longer period of time, we will also describe some tools to frame activities, slow or fast, so that we can be more effective at helping students get lost in rigorous work and lose track of the passage of time, regardless of how long the activity actually lasts. As educators, we frequently use the term pacing, but the underlying idea is surprisingly hard to pin down. It has something to do with speed, but pacing can't just be a synonym for how fast we go through content. Sometimes we're moving through material slowly, but there's energy crackling in the air. The work of teaching and learning can feel fast even when we're moving slowly, and it can feel slow when we're moving fast. So, pacing inside of a lesson is different from speed. It's more like your students' perception of speed as you teach, or what Lemov calls the illusion of speed. We manage actions and decisions to create a perception of rapid progress when we want our students to feel as though they are moving, and we balance that with times when we prefer a pace that, while it still maximizes engagement and focus, feels slower and more reflective for students. Mastering pacing can help us accomplish that.
So what is pacing? Pacing is a term most teachers are familiar with, but it lacks a clear and consistent definition. The obvious definition that pacing is the speed at which you teach doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Most teachers recognize a discrepancy between the actual rate at which teaching happens and the rate at which students perceive it to be happening. So pacing is clearly different from the rate at which you move through material. An alternative way of defining pacing is the illusion of speed. It isn't the rate at which material is presented, but rather the rate at which the lesson makes that material appear to unfold. Pacing is the skill of creating the perception that you are moving quickly. Or maybe better, since teaching effectively can use a range of tempos, from slow, steady reflection to bracing, energetic speed. Pacing is the illusion of speed, created as and when necessary. Students like to think they're doing something new more frequently than you can afford to change the topic of their learning. And pacing taps into that desire. When you're maximizing pacing, your teaching engages and interests students, giving them a sense of progress and change. Things are happening. Students feel the progress and never know what's next. Think about the last time you were flying, and think about how fast it felt during the takeoff as compared to the cruising. Now, regardless of how fast you're actually flying, passengers' perceptions of how fast they're moving is influenced by the reference points they see passing. And the same goes for your students. When they see checkpoint after checkpoint being reached, they feel a sense of pace and a sense of engagement with the lesson. In the classroom, moments in which the activity shifts, a task is completed, or a new person enters the conversation can serve as reference points and help create this sense of pace progress and change.
Too much passivity isn't the only way students can get distracted. Too much illusion of speed can distract students and probably overwhelm them. Too much speed can be as problematic as not enough speed. The goal is balance, and the good news is that the tools of pacing can often make what you choose to do feel dynamic and engaging, even when, at its core, it's reflective and deliberate. According to Lemov, the first thing we have to do is establish a productive pace in our classrooms. Create fast or slow moments in a lesson by either shifting activity types or by shifting formats. Let's start with shifting activity types. Achieving the right balance of energy in your classroom requires a technique Lemov calls change the pace, the ability to shift between fast or slow moments in a lesson by changing activity types, for example, transitioning from independent practice to discussion, or activity formats, for example, staying with a discussion but changing its dynamics from, say, a pair activity to a whole class discussion. In this videotaped lesson, teacher Erin Michaels quickened classroom pace by staying laser-focused on the objective of adding fractions while shifting deftly among different styles of participation. The series of tangible shifts among activities ensures that the pace feels energetic and kept the lesson intellectually engaging without diluting the focus. Let's watch some clips of that lesson.
Well, and look, are you ready? All right, let's see. Your fraction challenge question. Oh. First one is 2/5 plus 3/8. Good work. Finishing up in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, markers down, show. Boards down. Talk to me. I'm seeing people disagree. Turn and talk to your partner and explain why you disagree.
First, you have to use the least common denominator.
3, 2, 1. Javon, start us off.
I think that's incorrect. It's incorrect because you're not supposed to add the denominator because the value gets smaller.
In the under 2-minute clip you just watched, you saw Erin Michaels' students complete independent work, discuss with a peer, and participate in teacher-driven, guided questioning of rapid succession. Erin harnessed the ability to shift the type of thinking students do and keep the topic consistently focused on a single objective. Generally speaking, Lemov proposes that there are approximately 5 types of activities that we ask students to participate in on a regular basis. Each one of these requires students to think and engage in different ways. They are assimilating knowledge directly from sources such as the teacher or a text, participating in guided practice or guided questioning structured by the teacher, executing skills without teacher support, as in independent practice, reflecting on an idea, thinking quietly and deeply, and discussing and developing ideas with classmates. Because all 5 of these activity types are important, and because students should develop skills with all of them through constant practice, they are often referred to by Doug Lemov as muscle groups. He believes teachers should work on all of them regularly to ensure that students get a well-rounded mental workout. Fortunately, shifting among the 5 muscle groups creates not only balanced intellects, but also a sense of engaging change. In other words, good pacing. Lemov is quick to point out that this list is not a hierarchy. All 5 types are important. The list also isn't a formula suggesting the same approach every time. Each lesson will require something different. Each teacher's style and approach will shape the progression. Also, the list is not a rubric. It doesn't describe the 5 things we must include in every lesson. Of course, it's good to work multiple muscle groups during a given lesson, and to eventually work them all at various points during a unit. But the idea is to adapt activity types to the content of the lesson, your students' needs, and your own style as a teacher. It's better to do 2 or 3 types of thinking really well than a superficial job of all 5, according to Lemov. That said, let's dig into the 5 muscle groups in more detail. When students are presented with new information while they listen, read, or take notes, including when they ask or answer basic questions, they are engaged in knowledge assimilation. This could involve a class reading a text silently or aloud by teacher or students, or a teacher lecturing, modeling a problem, or sharing a presentation with or without occasional question and answer from students. Some examples include: a teacher explains what juxtaposition is and why an author might use it. Students take notes in a section of literary devices. Is that what Steinbeck is doing with Lenny and George? A student asks. Good example, the teacher replies. A teacher presents a PowerPoint or Google slideshow with pictures and text on the daily life in America in the 18th century. She offers additional detail as she narrates, asking and answering a few student questions with the purpose of increasing their knowledge of facts about daily life in the 18th century. A teacher asks students to join her in reading a chapter of To Kill a Mockingbird, partially aloud and partially independently. A teacher models how to solve for rate of change. When students engage in activities that involve more extensive back and forth with the teacher, practicing the use or application of knowledge, they are engaged in guided practice, guided questioning. Guided practice might involve executing the steps in solving a problem, with the teacher asking questions to remind students what steps to take next, or it might involve explication of a text passage, with the teacher consistently providing new and more targeted questions to unlock understanding. It is usually used before students have independent mastery. Some examples provided by Lemov include: a teacher asks a group of students a series of questions to see how well they understood her presentation on daily life in America in the 18th century, making additional inferences about 18th century life. Teacher: what were some of the key ways their daily lives were different from ours? Student: they worked harder. Teacher: can you tell me one way they would have had to work harder? Student: well, making meals. They would have had to light a fire every time they wanted to cook. Teacher: yes. And what work would they have had to do to be able to light a fire? A teacher tells students, let's examine some passages from the novel and see if we can find examples of juxtaposition together. What's our definition of juxtaposition? Okay, so where are some places where contrasting ideas or people appear in direct proximity? Okay, and is there any evidence that this might have been a deliberate decision? So, what is the purpose of the juxtaposition? A class solves a system of equations together, with the teacher asking various students to explain the steps or share their answer for each step. When students complete work that they know how to do on their own, they are engaged in independent practice. Independent practice is usually done without significant support from the teacher. It's often done silently, but just because work is silent and independent does not make it independent practice. For example, silent reading is often knowledge assimilation, and reflecting on or brainstorming solutions to questions students don't know how to solve is reflection and idea generation, which is the next topic in the section. By way of distinguishing, independent practice implies the autonomous execution of a skill or application of knowledge base that students are in the final stages of mastering. Some examples include telling students, now that we've learned what an adverb is, look at the next 5 sentences and see if you can find all the adverbs. There are 7 of them. Go. Students apply what they've learned about showing, not telling, by writing 3 sentences about the experience of a character named Jonas as he rides a roller coaster without ever saying he rode a roller coaster. Students independently solve a problem set with various problems involving systems of equations. Students examine additional sections of a novel on their own to find and analyze further examples of juxtaposition. Students write a summary of the important ways daily life in 18th century America was different from now. Reflection is usually solo work, but even though it often looks like independent practice, it serves a different purpose. In independent practice, students execute work they know how to do on their own. In reflection, students are given time to try to make sense of things they are in the midst of learning or do not yet fully understand. Reflection is often silent and frequently involves writing. When the task involves brainstorming potential solutions, it is for idea generation. Some examples include: a teacher asks students to reflect in writing on how differences in daily life in the 18th century might have caused people to understand the role of family differently from how we do today. A teacher asks students to reflect on why an author might use juxtaposition, or to think of examples of juxtaposition they could use in their own autobiographies and what purposes it might serve. A teacher asks students to think about what steps are hardest for them in solving systems of equations and make notes to themselves on how to be successful. A teacher gives students a very challenging math problem and asks them to list the skills they've mastered that might be helpful in solving it. Activities in which students develop ideas and answers by talking directly to one another in small groups or as a class are discussion. They often make the use of accountable talk and other discussion protocols designed to make discussions productive and efficient while preserving student autonomy. In some cases, you might insert batches of discussion during guided practice or guided questioning to ensure that a certain number of comments come from students without mediation from you. We call this playing volleyball, not tennis. Some examples from Lemov include: a teacher asks students to debate the ethics of genetically modifying food and organisms. A teacher asks students to participate in a whole class Socratic seminar and discuss the impact of corruption on American politics in the 1890s. A teacher asks students to turn and talk to a partner to identify where a peer made a mistake in adding two fractions with unlike denominators. Lemov notes that establishing perfect distinctions between the activity types won't always be a possibility. Although he tries to establish boundaries by outlining general characteristics and providing some examples, it's notable that some activities will blur the bounds between one type and another, and that at some point the categorization becomes more trouble than it's worth. Don't know exactly what type of activity it is? Not to worry. If in the pursuit of a single objective you are making regular shifts in the types of work you ask students to do, even if you can't categorize all of them, you're probably doing okay. Now let's take a closer look at how the different activity types can come together in a lesson. In this 2-minute clip, Jessica Bracey will shift from knowledge assimilation while students read together into 2 more student activities: reflection, as everyone stops to write, and discussion, as students share their reflective thinking with each other. In the entire 10-minute lesson, Lemov notes that she engages students in 5 different activities among 4 activity types, keeping the pace quick and energy high.
Listen, things have changed between me and Maddie. She's not my friend anymore. Tony sounded very convincing.
Pause there to enter your books. First question. So you should be focusing on question 87 on your reading response journal for chapter 10. We're here. Please read question for me. Question 87. Go ahead, Angela.
What is Tony's plan? Why does Tony create this plan? What does this reveal about Tony?
Perfect. You have evidence in the text. Make sure you find it and write it. Please get to work. Make sure you're writing the sentences. Why is she? Your pencils need to be down by the time I get to 1, and your knees need to be in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Put that hand up. What is the plan? Why and what does this reveal about Tony? Let's start off with Omar.
I think the plan is to act like Tony's friend is to act like she's not Maddie's friend anymore, so she can find out like who stole the bracelet, and to see if Angel is pulling a game on who stole the bracelet.
After the discussion, paraphrase, push it even further. Please track. Danielle.
Tony's plan is to also think that she's not friends with Maddie, but I like to add that she's also doing this because, like Omar said, she wants to figure out who stole the bracelet, and I think she's also doing this to try to trick Charlene and Angel into thinking that they're not friends and that they're separated now, and so that she can really see what they're really thinking inside of them really deeply to think who really stole the bracelet, or if it's a trick.
That was really strong. Did you please give this a what?
Doug Lemov points out that sometimes it just doesn't work out for teachers to change activities every few minutes. But he says you can still bring energy, the feeling of fast, to a lesson or to a section of a lesson that needs some mojo, even if you stay with the same activity. Changing formats within an activity is one way to do that. By changing formats, that means changing how you interact with your students or how students interact with each other. You're not changing the essential nature of the task, just the way students experience it.
One way to create the illusion of speed is by using a variety of activities to accomplish your objective, and moving from one to the other throughout the course of the lesson. Students would like to think that they are learning something new more frequently than you can actually change the topic. So the key is to create the illusion that you are moving quickly to give them a sense of progress and change. One way to do this is not to change topics all the time. I mean, that's just confusing. But to change formats. It's worth thinking about the difference between changing topics every 10 to 15 minutes for an hour, which is distracting, confusing, and unproductive, and changing the format of the work every 10 to 15 minutes as you seek to master one single topic. The latter is likely to improve your pacing. The former to distract and confuse students. Spending 10 minutes on topic sentences, 15 minutes on subject-verb agreement, and 15 minutes on copy editing yields an unfocused lesson. But a lesson on topic sentences might be both focused and fast-paced if you follow these directions. Here's a step-by-step blueprint to teach topic sentences that could easily be modified to fit any content area. Start with a quick do now, asking students to compare different topic sentences for a paragraph on an interesting topic. Move directly into a mini lesson in which you define topic sentence and provide positive and negative examples. Teach a short song about the criteria for a good topic sentence. Guide students through 3 or 4 examples where they write an effective topic sentence for a given paragraph. Have your class write topic sentences for each paragraph in a memoir that you've written, analyzing the various suggestions for each, marking them up, and improving them together. Then move to independent work of drafting topic sentences for a set of widely varying paragraphs. Then you want to wrap up with a quick review of your topic sentence song. And finally, as always, cap with an exit ticket. You should note that nothing in this blueprint takes more than 10 minutes. Brain research suggests that people of all ages tend to begin losing focus after 10 minutes and need something new to engage them. Something else you might want to think about is whether your activities are active or passive. Research suggests that you should fluctuate between these two types. If there are 2 or 3 highly active kinesthetic activities in a row, the class's energy level can shoot off the charts, and kids can lose focus. Alternatively, if there are 2 or 3 highly passive activities in a row, the class can lose its energy entirely and also lose focus. And finally, mark the beginning and end of activities clearly, so students feel they are moving along and that they are gaining a sense of accomplishment as the lesson approaches its end.
Undoubtedly, you will come up with many other ways to change formats, but here are a few that Lamov lists to get you thinking. Use a combination of accountable independent reading, partner reading, and teacher oral reading to read extended blocks of text. Break a whole class discussion by telling students, for example, Darius just made a very interesting argument. Turn and talk with your partner to discuss how accurate it is. Alternate between prompting students to reveal their answers to a question using hand signals and have them record their answers on whiteboards before holding them up. In this PD today, we looked at the various ways teachers can present or frame material to create mileposts for their students, points in a lesson that have the effect of either increasing or decreasing the perception of speed within a classroom. Skillful pacing, together with high academic expectations, a strong plan of attack, and a stable and sturdy lesson structure utilizing the activity muscle groups, makes for a productive classroom experience and enables the creation of a rigorous academic ethos. Ultimately, one of the many goals of teaching is to encourage and support students in the act of thinking for themselves. Because great pacing is about the sum as much as it is the parts, let's end today with an analysis of what it looks like when these tools and techniques coalesce into a single lesson. In this case, one taught by a 4th grade teacher named Ashley Hinton. Over the course of a writing lesson whose objective was to have students practice showing instead of telling in their writing, Ashley employed a variety of the techniques described here today. She changed the pace to give students a rigorous and well-balanced mental workout. During one particularly well-paced 15-minute chunk of her lesson, Ashley created a sense of engaging change by moving between 4 different muscle groups. In this 3-minute clip, see if you can point out the 4 that she used.
So really picture yourself, Brandon, I can already see it on your face, you are there. Really picture yourself on a roller coaster. Think of actions that you would do that could help someone visualize that you're riding a roller coaster. One would be that you throw your hands up in the air because we all just did that. I'm going to be coming around and highlighting ones that I want to be shown out, so make sure they are juicy. Pencils up. With your partner. Good work. Voices down.
We can say.
Yes, I want that one shared out because that definitely helps me picture what you're doing.
And like the who is going down.
That's me on a roller coaster. I would never get on one, but that's me on a roller coaster. That's actually really funny. Okay, so you're going to share out that one, and I want you to share out this one, okay? 3, thank you, Destiny. 2, 1. Poster. What? If I highlighted your paper, please state. Ready to share in 3, 2, 1. Kevin, loud and proud. Yes, and you didn't just say yelling because it's not just yelling. If you're on a roller coaster like Nitro, you are yelling at the top of your lungs. Thank you, Kevin. What about you, Evan?
Mine was shaking head on regret.
Shaking head in regret. When would you do that?
I was that one.
when we're first getting my numbers, one of the we're off in class.
Shaking head in regret. Yep, as you're about to do that first drop. Don't make me do this. Don't make me do this. Martin.
Close your eyes tightly if you don't want to see what's happening.
So you close your eyes tightly. In awesome detail, Martin, that you should input into your paper. Look at your neighbor and say, way to go you. Way to go you. Look at another neighbor and say, way to go you. Way to go everybody. Back and start. Awesome job. But now, here comes the hard part. Pencils up. Who are you writing about? Brianna Hopkins?
Yeah.
And he's on a what koan? And are you going to say he was riding a roller coaster? Go to work. 4 minutes. Yes, independent. Who am I going to share out?
Pause this video and see if you can name the 4 activities, Lamob's muscle groups, Ashley used in this lesson. When you resume, we will reveal Lamob's analysis of Ashley's activity pacing. First, discussion. Students participated in a quick, small group discussion to brainstorm ideas for a writing prompt. Second, reflection and idea generation. Students recorded the ideas they gained through discussion with their partners. Next, guided practice, guided questioning. Ashley called on students to share the ideas they brainstormed with their partners. Finally, independent practice. Ashley's students then drafted a response to the writing prompt.